welcome everyone again to the Beyond Product podcast. This is a podcast that we're interested in learning about interesting, innovative products, but also the value that they're creating to us, to the world, to the users. Today, I have on the show Bettina Stockinger. Bettina is a business manager at BluePlanet Ecosystem. This is a really interesting startup from Vienna, Austria, and Bettina is from Vienna, Austria. What the product that BluePlanet Ecosystem has is called LARA, which stands for Land-Based Automated Recirculating Aquaculture System. I hope I got it right. Welcome, Bettina, to our show, and I will let you introduce yourself more, tell us more about yourself, but also about LARA and BluePlanet Ecosystem, because this is really exciting.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the invitation. So my background is in law and economics and international development, but I also developed a really strong interest in the global food system. So after my bachelor's in law and economics, I focused more and more on the aspects of the global food systems and economics. Mm-hmm. So after graduating, I basically started at BluePlanet Ecosystems, and I can combine the fields in my profession as business manager.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So tell us about BluePlanet Ecosystem, because my understanding of it is probably very on the surface. And just to explain to our audience, BluePlanet Ecosystem build this complete ecosystem, almost like in a container, where you can grow fish for commercial purposes. You build that ecosystem, and then you can send this, ship it to all over the world. So tell us a bit more about that.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, as you said, we provide technology for aquaculture systems. So BluePlanet Ecosystem started in 2019. We're a biotech startup, and it actually started in Silicon Valley as part of the IndieBio Accelerator. Mm-hmm. I wasn't part of that yet, but some very smart people. So our CEO, Paul, has a background in renewable energy engineering and came up with this idea, basically to use sunlight to create a product of high value like food. And so the conclusion was, okay, let that be fish. Mm-hmm. That's where the turning sunlight into seafood comes from. But maybe taking a step back, as you said, we're producing these containerized aquaculture systems. So basically we provide the hardware, but we also provide software and biology services. We provide basically a plug and play system for customers to enter into the aquaculture market and make fish farming as easy as using an iPhone.
Oh, that's a great vision there, because we know what iPhone made for the world, how it changed the world. So your vision over there is to create a type of tools or products for the agricultural industry all over the world that will be so easy that anyone will be able to start it?
With a bit of training, anyone can start fish farming. Mm-hmm. The idea is really to break down the complexity. So maybe I go a bit more into detail of how the system works.
Sure. Yeah.
You said it's like a container. It is really in the size of standard shipping containers. It's basically 3 stacks. So at the top, we have container-sized way of producing microalgae. So it's like tubular structures where we use the sunlight to produce the algae. This algae is fed to the container that is under this unit, where we grow zooplankton, which is in turn the natural food for fish, which mm-hmm. are in the 3rd unit. So it's a 3-stacked system. And by using the wastewater from the fish, from the lowest system, we recirculate it back to the top, to the algae, where the wastewater is used for the nutrient. The algae basically need the nutrients of the fish. So in essence, we create a completely natural ecosystem, because that's what happens in every aquatic ecosystem. You have the algae and the fish that feed on the zooplankton.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. So how many fish or what type of fish can be grown in such an ecosystem?
So for us, it's really important that the fish is happy and healthy. So it should be fish that is comfortable. So at the moment, we're using tilapia and shrimps.
Mm-hmm.
Any species that fits into the system and that is, comfortable in this environment.
I see. So for example, tilapia, how many fish? I don't know if this is in numbers or this is in kilograms, but how many can be produced in such an environment?
So we can produce 2 tons of fish per unit per year, and the harvest cycle is around 6 months.
Mm-hmm. So every 6 months. Now, to me, the interesting question will be, because you guys are in Austria, you create the entire ecosystem with the fish and you ship it over the world, or you create the system to create it, then you ship it, and then the fish is being grown over there. How does that work?
Mm-hmm. At the moment, all operations take place in Austria. We produce the technology. We don't ship it stocked. We ship the fish, the baby fish, separate.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But that is part of the biology services that we provide. We have our own hatchery. So basically, we grow our own baby fish. And this way we can ensure that, from the egg to the harvest, we know where the fish comes from, and we know in which tank it is. We know that it's healthy. We know that, how it responded to the feeding. We can track the whole supply chain of that.
I see. And the people, the farmers that are buying those, what type of experience or knowledge they need to have in that, or can they learn everything from scratch?
So, at the moment, if you want to run an aquaculture system, you need a lot of expertise, and you need to know a lot about how the system behaves and what can happen with different inputs. We try to really take away this complexity with our software. So basically, the software that we provide takes over decisions. For example, when to feed, how much to feed, how does the system respond to how we collect the biological data and system data, and also the physical data. This way we can break down the complexity pretty much. I mean, you still need some training. You still need to understand, you're working with animals. The goal, however, is to make it possible for, you only need one farm manager who oversees 50 containers. At the moment, you'd need, I don't know, multiple teams, a lot of people to do that. And it's actually really hard to find good people, or to find people working in aquaculture, people who have this expertise. So it's not that we're taking away these jobs. It's that not many people do or have the expertise required. So we basically help them to get into this market and to produce the fish.
I can imagine that in Austria, it's a country that doesn't really have, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't have sea borders. It's all in the middle of the continent. So it's probably fishing, especially sea fishing, it's probably not a thing in Austria, or not a traditionally thing. Maybe more like sweet waters from lakes and stuff like that. Because I'm sure you have lots of water over there from the mountains, etc. But do you see that in Austria, a place where more people can now have access to this type of farming that before they didn't have?
They also have access to locally produced fish. So specifically in Austria, we import 95% of the fish. So we are really dependent on external markets. And that is a huge selling point as well for our systems, because you can place them anywhere. You can place them close to cities or desert environments, which really helps to bring the food production closer. That's interesting for Austria, for sure. It's also interesting for many other countries. We have a lot of interest from Saudi Arabia. They're having these huge projects to build autonomous cities.
Right.
So it's a topic for food security. So it's different. We address different consumers or customers,
Yeah.
from food processors to governments to
Yeah. So if we're going to the theme of our podcast, the value beyond the product, this is really I can think about many different areas where such a system and such a product that you're creating is creating value. Like you mentioned, different type of customers, like the farmers, the producers of fish that either did not have access to something like that in the past or did not have the experience. So with the help of your ecosystem that you're building and the software, we'll talk about the software a bit more because I'm really intrigued about that. I read on your website that it has some AI components in there that can help. But in general, you bring this through the product. What about other type of values? I mean, we can start with the biggest one, probably like saving the world, right? With or saving the fish in the seas. We know it is a big issue these days with population of fishing and stuff like that. Is that also a consideration where BluePlanet Ecosystem started this?
it's for sure an consideration to minimize the environmental impact. And this is for sure also thinking about oceans. Because most fish that is taken from the ocean ends up in fish meal and fish oil, which is then again fed to other fish. So if you think about salmon, you need 25 kilograms of fish feed to produce 1 kilo of salmon. For tilapia, this ratio is like 1:1. We really want to decouple the production of animal protein from the oceans. And that means that we want to be independent of fish meal and fish oil, because it just doesn't really make sense to take the fish from the ocean to feed fish in an aquaculture system.
I see. And that's the traditional way that it's done in traditional pools where they grow fish?
Yeah, that is so. There is a lot of research in the whole fish feed market, and it's not that easy because you still need the right nutritional value for the fish species. It's supply and demand, but also like consumer demand. I think more and more consumers are aware of, they don't want to eat fish anymore, or they only want to eat fish where they know that it comes from a sustainably sourced place. And so they avoid like tuna or salmon in total. And then we can be an alternative to that. There are a lot of cultures where fish is a big market, and they will continue to, eat other fish that we can produce in our systems. But that's not our focus. Our vision is to produce a lot of fish, to have big farms and not be some niche product, to really make an impact, and hopefully also on the oceans.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then there is also the value to, and you touched on it a bit, the value to the consumers. So the people that are eating those fish, are they, other than being conscious about the environment for those consumers, are these fish also healthier than fish that will be caught in the ocean or grown in traditional pools?
Just the fact that we don't use any antibiotics in the systems, and that we know from the egg to the plate basically like what the fish ate and what the water quality was like. I'm confident to say that the fish is healthier, just because we monitor, things you don't want to have in the water and you don't want to have in your fish. We ensure that the environment is healthy and the fish is healthy.
That's very cool. Now let's go back to the software, because my background is in software. I'm always very curious about software and products and how does it help. Of course, the software here is not the main thing. The product you're really creating is healthy fish, environmentally conscious, growing of fish and stuff like that, and the containers and all of that. But you mentioned a bit about the software that helps them to monitor the containers and monitor the ecosystem. And then tell us a bit more about that. So what does that software does?
I think actually the software is one of the biggest parts of the product. It really adds a lot of value. Maybe also going back to what makes the fish healthy. So we use computer vision to track the fish and, for example, look at their breathing patterns, feeding response, and
it's like a big brother for fish. Sorry, I just had that image of like big brother looking at the fish, but that's very cool.
They have no privacy. They're monitored constantly, and we see if they. You can actually see the way they behave tells you if they are healthy or if they are stressed. A sick fish will move differently or feed or not feed at all than the other fish. So you can tell a lot from that. For example, also the breathing patterns. We look at their lip movement, how fast do they breathe, and that tells you more about the oxygen level in the water. So we're trying not just to use sensors to learn more about the fish or actually shrimp in our system, but also like the way these animals behave.
This is fascinating to me. I wouldn't even know how to start building a software like that. I did see a few TV shows in the past about documentaries about technology in poultry raising and in, I think, also cows and milk industry and stuff like that. But I've seen recently also about like cameras that were able to measure how healthy they are and stuff like that. So it's really cool to hear that you've done it in your system for the fish. Okay, so that is one part there, how they are, what their health is. And then this information is then analyzed, provided to the grower, to the farmer, to tell them what they have to do next in order to sustain this ecosystem.
Yeah, so the data is basically uploaded to the cloud, and we have our control website where you can see all the data, and we would provide the access to the farm manager, and we, as BluePlanet Ecosystems, have access to the data as well, because the more data we have, obviously, the more we can automate the system even more. So the idea is really to have as many farms as possible now to learn what can go wrong and what to.
So machine learning there, collecting the data and learning from the data, how to improve it. Yeah. Perfect. So I can definitely see how that can help people with less experience by having the system really help them to become maybe an expert, maybe not expert, but at least it will help them to grow those fish properly. Are there any aspects of the software that are helpful for the growers? Is that the main thing, that the software is helping the growers, or there is other areas that we didn't cover yet?
I would say it's helping them, but it's also should take the decisions from them. So the idea is to train the system in a way, and that's where the AI reinforcement learning comes in, to train the system to know, okay, this pump uses this much energy. Maybe it's too old and we should replace the pump, predictive maintenance, or at what point should we shut off a pump or a drum filter or whatever. So really to automate the system, or also if you see there is the next few days there won't be sun, so we already save energy or put the system for a day into a safe mode where we feed less, all these decisions that have to be taken for the whole environment that the farm manager would have to do, but then he needs to know a lot about it.
I see. So it's connected with a forecast ecosystem where they are, and then it can help them plan towards that.
Yeah, so not yet, but that's definitely the goal, that it works.
I see.
That it takes the best decisions itself. That
Yeah.
as farm manager, you just look at it, see if you look at 50 farms, if anything behaves extraordinarily well or poorly, and then you have a look at those systems. But in general, you don't have to make every decision for every system.
Yeah, no, that's great value. I can definitely see how software can help with that. What about the end results? Like when they have to fish the fish, right, or collect them? I guess I'm not a fisher, so to me it's like fish the fish. That's the terms that I would use. But when they have to basically collect the fish, that's something physical that they have to do, right? It's not like all of a sudden you will drain all the water. The software will drain the water for them, and here you have dead fish, right? That's not how it works.
Yeah, you still have to process them. So that's, but that's where our service basically ends. So we provide the service until we say, okay, they're ready to harvest, or you can even agree on a date. It's like, on this day, a lot of consumers buy their fish because of any event. So they say, okay, 3 days before that, we harvest. That is, by the way, also an advantage of the system, because traditionally it's like more unpredictable for retailers to know when do they get the fish, how much fish do they get.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So what you can create is also a connection with the market ecosystem to say, depends on where you are and depends on the markets around you, harvest at this specific time because that's where people will buy. Of course, the fish has to be ready. They have to be big enough, I guess, to be harvested. But that could be also a really interesting value there that a software system can do by tapping into those markets and analyzing when people will need it. So the predictability is really interesting. Because part of product and being a business owner is to be able to predict how much they're going to actually earn from it. What is their ROI is going to be. So that's really an interesting point there. But the actual harvesting is done by the farmers, so they have to know how to harvest them.
Yeah, so the idea is that's why we're targeting food processors, because they have the facilities. They can, for example, if you take food processor who used to be more in the like meat market or had chicken or whatever, and wants to use this facility for 1 or 2 days to basically diversify, and then they have all the tools, and there are a lot of regulations. You can't just sell food. So they are specialists in that field, and they step in at that point and provide it to retailers or wherever.
I see. Okay. Oh, that's very cool. If someone new wants to get into that business, based on your ecosystem and knowledge, can you help them to learn it and to also get the licenses and whatever is needed in their location, or is that something more they have to do locally?
We will definitely do it wherever we already maybe have a demonstration farm and went through all the processes. I know in Austria, it's sometimes, because it's such a new field, you're not really a traditional fish farmer, so some regulations don't really work for what we're doing. We also want to set a standard, say, okay, this is how fish farming can work.
So you're even kind of helping the regulators create new regulation based on this new type of ways to grow fish, which is very cool. So there is even value there that can be created by helping the local governments create more value locally.
Yeah, if you look, for example, so our head of biology, he's a veterinarian. So we're in contact with, the representatives or universities, and they're very interested in the system because for veterinarians, it's like a one time. They visit a farm, they look at it at the day they're going there. It's like a long commute, but then they don't know what happens the rest of the time. For them, it's also very interesting what we provide, because you can just basically sit in your home office and
Yes.
check on the
Yes.
fish health of our system.
Yes.
So from that point of view, it is different to how it is regulated at the moment to check on fish as a veterinarian, for example, but it can change the standards.
Yeah, that's very cool. No, I see that now, how you can even use the same system that you developed and the same software, that smart software, to try to assess the health of other fish ecosystems, not just the one that you provide, but also in other pools and other locations. And this way help them, create better produce, right? And help their local veterinarians on an ongoing basis, remotely from wherever they are. It's a bit commoditized in that, I guess, to be able to do that from wherever it's. So I definitely see so much value in that. It's like amazing. And we always ask in the podcast, how do you measure the value, right? So, I don't even know which one we should touch on, on measuring the value. But what's the most important for you at BluePlanet Ecosystem? Other than the ROI, I'm sure that's important, and the revenues, the bottom line for the company. But what's really what value do you measure?
For sure, like, of course, the costs of the system, but also the convenience. We want to be efficient in producing them so that we can really make a big impact in the manufacturing process. We're looking to really streamline it to reduce the cost of the system, and a lot of like stuff around it that the consumer doesn't need. We're trying to be really consumer oriented.
Yeah, so probably the value to the world or the value to the consumer is very hard to measure, because this is like it could be a world impacting, and it could be consumer impacting in ways that are it could be emotional, or it could be only in the long term that we will see the impact of that with fish population in the seas and healthier fish in consumer plates and stuff like that. But efficiency is one of those things that I can definitely see how you would try to measure or be able to measure, because efficiency is about the time it takes to do things, the tension or between things. So are we reducing tension so things are more streamlined, like you said? So that's definitely areas that are much more in our control, and you can actually do those. You can measure those. So I definitely get that. But with such a system that have so much value on so many different areas, like it's an ecosystem, but it's ecosystem around it that you're creating value to. It's definitely hard to measure all the value that you're creating there. So, which makes it even cooler.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's great to work with it. Yeah, I guess the long-term impact is, or the long-term value is what we working towards, and what is our goal, to have like an impact on people being able to afford healthy fish, or the impact on, the ocean. But that's not something we can measure at the moment. So at the moment, we can look at how quickly can we produce them, and that's our biggest bottleneck at the moment.
I do have one question that I'd like to ask all of our guests. If you would like to give a shout out to any other product, what would that be?
My shout out would go to Stephanie Lip. I met her last year at Collision, and she founded a biotech startup. They're making mushroom-based leather.
Mushroom-based leather. Oh, this is so cool. Okay.
Yes. So she and her partner produce, so it's mycelium-based leather. So I think it's really cool because she innovates in the fashion industry, and it's a really cool product.
Really, really exciting. Where can people reach out to you if they want to learn more?
The best way is to reach out on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to us on our website or via email.
Perfect. And thank you everyone for joining us to the Beyond Product podcast. See you next time.